What does the coronavirus and Bernie Sanders have to do with your retirement? Let's have a look at that right now. Greetings, I'm Rick Ward from Working Class Wealth Creations. Today I just wanted to have a quick chat on something that's very much in the news with the coronavirus and the elections in the U.S. This is making a significant impact on the U.S. stock market, which in return affects the stock markets all around the world. But before we get started, I want to ensure that I won't be providing any financial advice to any of you. I don't know what your situations are. I'm not a financial advisor. The idea of this video is just to make you a bit more mindful about how world events can impact on your retirement funds. And should be a bit more mindful of what's happening with that and watch it more closely. And I'll let you know what I'm doing with my retirement funds in preparation for what's happening now and what's likely to occur over the next 6 months. First of all, we'll look at how are your retirement funds currently managed. Do you have a financial advisor? Do you have a 401k? What sort of retirement fund do you have? Or like here in Australia, superannuation plans are the most popular. Talking about the coronavirus and talking about the US elections, the uncertainty around that, particularly when we look at your retirement funds, chances are it's linked directly to the stock market. Now, over the last week or so, stock markets fell by over 10%, mainly due to the coronavirus and the unknown impacts, what that's going to be. And what I've also predicted is, since seeing that Bernie Sanders started to take the lead of Democratic nominations, that the stock market will also be impacted with that, with the possibility of having someone like Bernie Sanders, the nominee and possible president of the United States. That would devastate the financial markets in the US, which in turn would roll across the world. So those are big ticket item things beyond my control. They're having significant impacts on my retirement funds. Just looking at the statements of my superannuation fund here in Australia, it's been going up with the stock market. Over the last year, it's been a very good run. And just in the last few days, you can see how it's impacting on that. Now, as a rule, superannuation funds and a lot of your retirement funds aren't set for you to jump in and out of willy-nilly. Most people put it in there, set, forget. With superannuation, your employer pays into it. You don't really think about it till you're ready to retire. Most people don't realize that they can have some influence on their superannuation funds and how that money is allocated. I think it's very important for everyone to be mindful of what the retirement fund looks like, how it's managed, how world events can impact on that. Your retirement funds are usually just to be set in there, and the markets go up, the markets go down. It averages out. Most funds average out over about an 8% per year return over the life of the investment. But during those life of the investment, events like this, where it gone down 10% in a couple of days, can make a big impact. So when it get up, you make it up, but you've lost that capital when it's gone down 10%. In times like this, where there's volatility, we don't know what's going to happen. I think it's likely the stock markets will decline between now and November of 2020. So my superannuation account has been set in a growth mode because it's been in a growth mode with U.S. markets for a while. But now I'll go into my superannuation fund and I'll change that to the conservative pool, at least for the next 6 months, until we know what's happening with the coronavirus, how devastating that's going to be to the world economies and the stock market. And the U.S. elections will be settled by November. So over the next 6 months, I'll have my superannuation funds in a conservative pool. I don't get to pick what shares are bought and things like that within the pool. The experts at my superannuation fund will pick the individual stocks. But within almost all superannuation funds, you can have a growth pool, which is fairly aggressive, has risk, high returns. Then you have a balanced pool, which is a bit of this and that, depending on your age. A growth pool is very good for somebody young. And then your 30s, 40s, balance is good. And then you have a conservative pool when you get close to retirement. So you don't make sure you don't get sucked up in some of these volatility of losses. And then you have my plans, where you can actually select what percentage of your portfolio do you want in international shares, Australian shares, property. Depending on your superannuation fund, you have some flexibility around there of developing your own pool. Again, you don't pick the individual stocks. Experts still do that, but it kind of matches your risk profile and where you are. And you just be mindful of this. Most people just set up in a balance when they sort of start working and just leave and never think about it. But it can make a significant difference. Say you had $100,000 in your account, and over the last 2 days, that's gone down to 90. Well, when it takes back off again, you're going to build back up from 90. But what if you didn't have to lose the 10%? What if you only lost 5%? Well, that 5%, so that's $5,000. And when that takes off percentage-wise, you're going to be way farther ahead. There's no need to wear the brunt of the volatility in markets. And talking it over, this all came about talking to my family and friends about the situation. And it was an interesting response. I told them what I was doing. My paper assets, most of my paper assets are managed by a financial advisor in the US. And he seen the writing on the wall, and he's taken my stuff out of more aggressive things to retain my capital. And then when the markets pick back up again and we know what's happening with coronavirus, we know who's going to be the nominee or the president in the US, these certainty things, and the stock market's going to run again, well, then we'll put everything back to where it is. But for now, in this period of uncertainty, we're going to be very conservative with our money. So he's already allocated all these new allotments with my paper assets, and I managed my superannuation fund. In fact, I've changed it over to a conservative pool, and we'll see how that goes. Now, talking to some of my children, most of them are like, no, this isn't going to be a big downside, and we're going to stay aggressive and keep our money. We don't want to miss out on going to conservative pool, missing out on. This could turn around and rectify itself within days. There has been some stabling of it, but it's what your opinion is, and that's why you need to have a financial advisor or make that call for yourself. What do you think you should do? Do you think the markets are just going to bounce back off of this and you want to keep everything in the growth mode? Or you'd be like myself, again, I'm older, so I want to be more conservative, make sure I don't lose my capital. So I've been a bit more conservative in the next period. Or the vast majority of people just don't care. It seems too hard. Either they don't know they can adjust the superannuation or the retirement funds, or they've left it to the experts and say let them handle it. If that's what you want to do, absolutely fine. But it can make significant difference, particularly if you're older, if you're over 50. I'd really be looking at this carefully. Little story about in the GFC. I lost a lot of money in the GFC, but help with my financial advisor, I earned most of that back within 12 months. That was all good. But my father, who was retired at the time, he had his retirement funds. He had his little portfolio, and he got used to $1,000 a month he needed to live on. He had that in dividends and payments, and that was fine. But during the GFC, the stocks fell apart, his portfolio fell apart, and he was only getting $500 a month. He was getting $1,000 a month before, and I was only getting $500 a month. But to survive, to keep things going, he started selling his shares to make up the difference, to keep that $1,000. Well, by the time the GFC had sorted itself out, and I don't particularly think he had a great financial advisor, he'd lost most of his capital, and so he burned it all up. Even though he's still alive today, he's had to be on a government pension ever since because he lost all that. When things started to go sideways, pulled his money out into something more conservative at the time, he would still have something. He wouldn't need to sell the shares. That's what you want to avoid. You want to avoid selling your shares, because when they go back up, that's how you make your money back, is you still own 10,000 shares. So they're making you money. But if you only got 2,000 shares, well, you're not going to make nearly as much get back. So you want to hang on to that capital. That's very, very important. So what you choose to do this was totally up to you. I just want you to have a think about that. Be mindful of your affairs and where you are. If you think it's all too hard and you just leave it to the experts, that's fine. If you want to do something about it, look into your superannuation funds, your 401ks, see where your money's allocated for. Take an interest in that. And even really, if you have a financial advisor, if you don't, I really suggest you have somebody look over that. But even if you don't, if you're savvy enough to do some research on the internet, everything's out there. The coronavirus is a very hot topic right now, and it's making a devastating impact on the economies. And it's not necessarily because it's killing a lot of people. It's just disrupting supply lines because of the unknown. And it's the unknown that affects the stock markets. This might end up just being a bad flu season, and it goes through and everything goes back to normal in a short amount of time. Or this could be quite a devastating world event that's going to devastate markets for long term. Regardless, it will have a negative impact, at least over the next 6 months. So we need to be aware of that impact. And the other thing is with the U.S. elections, with Bernie Sanders being a democratic socialist, but he's pretty much a communist. And that would devastate the U.S. economy if he could do what he wants. It's unlikely he'll have the power to do everything he wants to do, but just the unknown factor of, well, what could he do and what sort of impact he could have is very scary to the markets. So that uncertainty, again, will work itself out over the next 3 to 6 months. But in the meantime, I think markets can be very volatile and it's very scary. And depending on where you are in life, you really need to keep an eye on this. And for the young people, I try to encourage them that if they take notice of this now, sure, they have 30 years in the workforce to go ahead and make their money back. But if they play it smart now and they monitor that as they go, they could easily double their retirement funds come retirement. So just food for thought. Be mindful, it's your money, hang on to as much as you can. I hope you found that information useful, and if you did, give me a thumbs up. If you have any comments on that or you'd like to share any stories with me, you can contact me privately through my emails at workingclasswealthcreations@gmail.com, through my social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and of course my website, workingclasswealthcreations.com. So until next time, this is Rick Ward from Working Class Wealth Creations, wishing you an extraordinary retirement.